Welcome to Unbiological Dad. My name is Keith, and well, I'm the Unbiological Dad. In this episode, we will go over navigating child care legalities, temporary custody, permanent custody, temporary guardianship, permanent guardianship, fostering, and adoption. Now, let me throw out my typical disclaimer here. I am not a lawyer, I'm not a paralegal, don't even hang out at law offices much. So, this is my interpretation of what this is, and what each one of these means. And of course, you should always seek an attorney for the different nuances of where you live at. Okay, so when it comes to legal arrangements concerning children, the terminology can be overwhelming. Understanding differences between temporary custody, permanent custody, temporary guardianship, permanent guardianship, fostering, and adoption is crucial for making informed decisions in the best interest of the child. Okay, so temporary custody. Temporary custody is a short term legal arrangement for granting one party the right to care for a child for a specific period of time. This often occurs during divorce or separation proceedings, providing stability for the child until a permanent custody arrangement is decided. It is a transitional solution designed to address immediate needs without implying a long term commitment. Of course, this channel is mainly focusing on adoption, fostering, kinship care. So, temporary custody, I just mentioned divorce, right? Well, this could also be for a couple or a parent that has some issues that need to be taken care of to better care for the child. Drug addiction, incarceration, just sick. Maybe they're battling cancer or disease, and they need someone else to take care of the child temporarily. Permanent custody. In contrast, permanent custody is a more enduring commitment established by a court decision. It grants ongoing responsibility for a child to one party. This arrangement is typically made when the court deems it the child's best interest to have a stable, long-term living situation. Permanent custody implies long-lasting commitment to the child's well-being. Temporary custody and permanent custody, in spite of the name permanent custody, permanent is should be more semi-permanent custody. With temporary, if you're going through a legal proceeding, then typically the judge um, will look at it every 30, 60, 90 days and see if the custody needs to, again, in this case, foster children or kinship care, or well, adoption it wouldn't be for foster care or for kinship. Temporary custody, the court will have proceedings, hearings every 30, 60, 90 days to see if the parent is now, or parents are now able to care for the child. And if they deem that the parent is fit for taking care of the child, then that will be reverted back to the birth parent's rights. Now, permanent custody, there's not trials or hearings set every 30, 60, 90 days. Once permanent custody has been decided, then basically it's up to the birth parent to petition the court for custody of the child. So basically, they got to kind of wake that whole system back up again and go to a judge and say, okay, this is what's been done, this is what's changed, this is why I should have custody back. Or of course, I guess the person or persons that actually have permanent custody, perhaps they can sign it back to the birth parents. That's going to depend greatly on the circumstances. So guardianship. Temporary guardianship involves appointing someone to care for a child for a limited duration. This legal arrangement is often reached when parents are temporarily unable to fulfill their responsibilities due to factors like illness, travel, or other or other short-term circumstances. It provides a designated guardian with the authority to make decisions for the child during the specified period. So between guardianship and custody, guardianship comes with more legal responsibilities, okay? And again, with the word temporary there, the judge, the court overseeing the case will typically have hearings every so often to determine if the guardianship can revert back to the birth parent. Permanent guardianship, on the other hand, is a more enduring solution. It comes into play when the court appoints a guardian to care for a child on a long term basis. This may be due to parental incapacity, unwillingness, or other circumstances preventing the biological parents from fulfilling their role. A permanent guardian has the authority to make decisions regarding the child's well being, education, and health care. So, again, guardianship comes with more responsibility than custody, okay? Um, and there's, to me, there's kind of a fine line or a foggy line between those two. We had guardianship we had permanent guardianship over our two children up to the point we adopted them, and we had uh, temporary custody prior to that when we were in that flux of um, again, this is where I try not to share too much information, so I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. Um, so we had temporary custody, I guess, while they were trying to do the safety plan. I was trying to think of those words there, the safety plan. And once it was seen that the safety plan was not going to be fulfilled, then we went on to permanent guardianship. The authority between custody and guardianship can vary based on specific legal arrangements in place, and of course, what the entity is that's overseeing this. Um, what state it is, what country you're in, even. I would love to hear from some different countries, people in different countries, to see how different some of these terms are and how it's dealt with. So, in general, custody refers to the legal and physical responsibility for the child's care, often granted through court decisions in cases of divorce or separation. Custodial parents have the authority to make decisions regarding the child's upbringing, education, and health care. Guardianship, whether temporary or permanent, involves appointing someone to care for a child when the parents are unable to do so. A legal guardian has the authority to make decisions about the child's well being and may share responsibilities with the parents or have sole authority depending on the court's determination. The extent of authority depends on specific terms outlined in the custody or guardianship agreement. Custody may grant more comprehensive decision making authority, especially if one parent has sole physical and legal custody. However, a guardian, particularly a permanent guardian, can also have significant authority over a child's upbringing. Ultimately, the legal framework and court decisions will dictate the authority granted to either custody or guardianship, and it is important to refer to the specific terms of each arrangement to understand the scope of decision-making power. Yeah, very wise words. Yeah, it can be challenging to know exactly where you stand with your agreement. It pays to look that over, and again, um, probably want to have an attorney look at this over and explain some of this to you on your specific case. Kind of talking a little bit in generalities here, and again, these instances can ebb and flow depending on your jurisdiction and how your agreement is written up. So next up, I have fostering. Fostering or foster care is a temporary living arrangement for a child under the supervision of a state agency or social service organization. Children enter foster care when they are removed from their biological parents' care to issues such as abuse, neglect, or parental incapacity. Foster parents provide a stable and supportive environment until the child can safely return home or a permanent placement is found. So, typically, prior to foster care comes up, there's a kind of something that's not mentioned here, and that would be kinship care. And probably should have added that bullet point in here more so than what I did. Um, Somewhere in that process of guardianship, custody and guardianship, the courts may have to determine fostering. Now, when they get into that, they want to keep the child as much as possible in with their birth family. So that could be they may end up going to a grandparent, aunt and uncle, maybe even a brother or sister, because sometimes the age gap's enough there that they can do that too. And then within kinship care, they can sometimes be in kinship care but not in foster care. If they are in foster care but being fostered by a family member, they get some additional help when that occurs. So, why wouldn't you want to go into foster care if, say, you're a grandparent? Why would you not want your kid to go into foster care, right? Because then you'll get additional resources versus um, permanent guardianship. And you do get some additional resources with permanent guardianship as well. Sorry, I'm getting some messages from my wife about the two littles. So anyway, um, the benefits of guardianship, the benefit of kinship care without going into foster care, and the benefits of kinship care with them in foster care. You typically get more resources when they're in foster care. Um, Having adopted someone out of state foster care and learning about some of the things that, man, how do I put this? Um, Learning about what some of the children go through in foster care made my wife and I want to not have those two girls go into foster care. Um, we did not want we wanted control. We wanted to have more control over more permanency for the kids. And again, that's typically what the state or county is looking for is permanency for the children. And so we chose not to go through foster care when we had when we had them in our custody and our under our guardianship. And that's a personal choice. There's so many different choices, and this is tip of the iceberg, I guess, of all the definitions and all that that go in here. You'll have to dig in for yourself and see what your circumstances are, what the birth parent circumstances are. Will they most likely be able to go back with their birth parents? Is this truly a temporary situation, or is this going to be something that's going to be drawn out over many years or a lifetime? And you know, those are tough decisions to make. So, guardianship, custody, and fostering are similar, but they definitely have their differences. Um, oh, and that leads me up to adoption. So, when you adopt, typically, this is in the United States, in the US, that I'm mainly speaking to here. Other countries may be similar. I don't know. Even states within the US are different. But if a child goes into foster care and then you adopt out of foster care, then you get resources you absolutely do not get if you adopt, well, privately. Because if you adopt without them going into foster care, you enter an agreement with um, the children's birth parents to do that, or the court has to terminate their parental rights and then give them over to you. So, again, these are all things to think about. So, adoption, let's go into that one. Adoption is a permanent legal process that transfers parental rights and responsibilities from the biological parents or legal guardians to adopted parents. This creates a new permanent family filed. This creates a new permanent family for the child. Adoption is pursued when it is determined the child cannot return to the biological family and a permanent, stable home is in their best interest. So, again, oh my gosh, there's so many different things to consider. I'm closer to retirement age, right? So, one of the things I had to consider was what happens for the girls as we get into retirement age. Um, what happens if we pass away? We're older. That could very well happen, even though that could happen to, anybody at any time. Um, so that was something. I got a cat crawling around behind me. Great. Okay, so anyway, so man, I totally lost my train of thought. That's gonna suck editing this. So anyway, adoption. I'm gonna back up just a little bit. So when adopting, financially, it's a good decision to adopt from having the kids go into foster care, especially if they're older kids, because then they're typically considered to be special needs, and there's some stipends and health insurance, Medicare, stuff like that, Medicare, whichever, that kicks in with children that have been in foster care, which helps for the care of them. But with adopting, you're the parent. You are 100% in control. Um, it's all on you, right? Financially and everything. Um, in the past, there has been some tax breaks. Well, let's talk about tax breaks. In the past, there has been tax breaks for those that adopt out of state foster care. They're typically, if you're paying state tax, there's some state tax for most states, breaks that you get. And then, of course, the IRS has it as well. And that can vary for the length of years. Those tax breaks, there's not as many for private adoption. And something that I would like to see is some of those tax breaks go to families that adopt. Your state may be different, but where I'm at, I don't recall any specific tax breaks if you're family and adopt. If you're a aunt, uncle, brother, sister, grandparent, or whatever. I think that would be a good thing to help encourage that. So I've kind of went over a lot, but also didn't really get in too terribly deep. I would love to dig in a little deeper as this channel grows. I would absolutely love to speak to an attorney for children, an attorney for adoptive parents, um, child protective services, Department of Family Services. Unfortunately, they get a really bad rap, and those entities, I, they're put in charge of the child's well-being, and they are hearing it from both sides, three sides, four sides, whatever. And they have to, along with courts, court system definitely is a bigger part of it. They have to try to help that child be in the best possible situation. I feel for those people, and I feel for the birth parents as well that are going through this because they're being separated from their children, and that's never a good thing. That's well, I say it's never a good thing. It's never an easy thing. Um, and everybody has an opinion about this. This is one of them topics that, well, It definitely encourages heated debates because there's so many different ways of looking at this and ways of dealing with it. So anyway, get out of that. So in conclusion, in navigating the legalities of childcare, understanding the distinctions between temporary custody, permanent custody, temporary guardianship, permanent guardianship, permanent guardianship, fostering and adoption is crucial. So you can make the best decision. So the child's parents can make the birth parents. So the child's birth parents can make the best decision. Um, and if they're teenagers, sometimes the children actually play a role in that decision as well. If they're 2 years old, probably not so much, right? But if they get older, a lot of times the courts will listen to them as well. So anyway, each option serves a very unique purpose, addressing specific circumstances to ensure the child's well-being, specific circumstances to ensure the child's well-being and stability. Seeking legal advice and guidance is highly recommended to make informed decisions aligned with the best interests of the child. Seek input from everybody, everything you can. Books, attorneys, people that have been through it. And I'm not going to shy away from the child's perspective or an adult that went through that as a child. When I was a kid, I grew up in a very nice household. I didn't think so at the time because my parents wouldn't let me go do everything I wanted, but they're not supposed to. Um, as I got older and listened to other people, I learned about things that were going on in people's houses that frankly horrified me. That I guess you kind of know what's going on, but you don't fully know. And what happens to a child early on from birth till, well, through teenage years, but definitely from birth to about 10 years old, man, it stays with them for life. Um, and bad things will happen. And people have come out of bad things being better people. But anyway, where I was headed with all this is please try to keep the child in mind when going through this. Maybe speak to a child that's been in foster or an adult that went through foster care as a child that may have been adopted when they were a child. Listen to their point of view and don't dismiss what they have to say because they they see it from a completely different direction. When we first adopted, kind of went into the whole thing of oh, this is great for us. And I don't want to say that I totally dismissed what the child went through, but I didn't fully appreciate the trauma and the loss, especially the loss that any child that we're talking about here and any of these groups that they've gone through, they no doubt have had some kind of a loss and no doubt have had some kind of trauma. So as you're going through this, making these decisions, keep that in mind. Grab every kind of resource you can and look at it and listen to people. And I wish you and the child that you are thinking of the best. Thank you for watching The Unbiological Dad. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell down there so when I post the next one of these videos, you'll be notified. Um, I'm not sure where I'm going with my next one after this. I've got so many different topics. It's hard for me to stay focused. This is such a huge thing. And by the way, I would, as I mentioned before, I would definitely like to interview um, people surrounding this whole topic. So if you are somebody that has been through this in whatever capacity, if you want to do an interview, I would absolutely love to get on a Zoom call with you and do an interview. Or if you know of somebody like that, please let me know. In fact, you can send me an email at Keith at unbiologicaldad.com and just let me know. Thank you for watching.